Claire suddenly discovered that their neighbors were moving in a panic. They decided to go out and said hello, but didn't expect the neighbors to see them as if they were monsters. Turned around and ran. They went to the street, found that all their neighbors were running away in despair. It seemed that except them, everyone was running from something terrible. They didn't have time to think too much at this moment, so they also packed their things, followed everyone and fled outside the city. But on their only road out of the city, they saw many cars driving in the opposite direction to them. Why did these people have to run back again? Until they went to the end of the road, just discovered that the government had blocked the town's only way out, asked them all to return to their own homes, waiting for news. They've never seen things like this before, didn't know what happened here. At this time, a piece of gravel from the cliff fell on their car. They followed the sound and looked up to the top of the mountain, saw that the entire mountain was shaking violently, like a giant beast about to wake up. Suddenly 2 jet fighters roared out from behind the mountain. Seeing them flying over the town, without any warning, directly dropped several incendiary bombs. The whole town was in flames in an instant. Everyone present was frightened by this shocking scene. At this time, the 2 fighters turned and flied to their direction. People were immediately frightened and fled in all directions. A family of 3 also ran to the top of the mountain, because Mother Claire knew there was a little-known refuge there. Not long after they ran out, the place that was just filled with people, it was blown into a sea of fire. It seemed like the government didn't want to leave anyone alive. They quickly found the entrance to the shelter. At this time, the 2 fighters were flying here again. The moment they closed the door, the bomb went off right over their heads. Didn't know how much time has passed. Father Ray discovered that a large amount of daily necessities were stored in the shelter, but what was going on outside? They knew nothing. Now the priority was to survive in this shelter first. Then they spent a whole year here. They have long been accustomed to life in the shelter. They locked the entrance tightly with chains, because they knew the outside world has long been occupied by an unknown creature, and they might be the only survivors in the world still alive. The girl Zoe sticks a periscope out of the vent, suddenly discovered that something was about to move in the forest in the distance. Her parents were searching for supplies outside the shelter. Seeing danger approaching, Zoe started shouting loudly. But her parents couldn't hear it at all. Zoe, looking at the stairs deep in thought, despite being warned numerous times, didn't climb out from this staircase, but Zoe wanted to save them, so couldn't care so much anymore. After she went out, she didn't see her parents. Have they been captured by the monster? Zoe started shouting loudly, until Claire covered her mouth from behind. At this time, the thing in the forest has rushed to them. It turned out to be just a few frightened deers. They breathed a sigh of relief, but Claire suddenly realized that these deers must be avoiding some kind of things more terrifying. They quickly fled back to the shelter. Ray locked the entrance in the darkness with a thick iron chain. They just heard waves of footsteps coming towards them, but the footsteps didn't seem to find the entrance. Instead, they walked back and forth on the ground above their heads. Zoe was so frightened that she almost cried. In order to prevent the child from making any noise, Ray whispered to her. Suddenly, there was a violent crash from the direction of the entrance. They went to the cave entrance, looked up, found something outside already near the shelter entrance. They dared not make a sound, could only suffer in despair and depression, but unfortunate things still happened. The doll pull ring in Zoe's hand was hung on a screw. Next second, screw fell off. The doll made a sound. In this open and quiet environment, the sound was particularly harsh. Ray snatched the doll away, used a knife to take out the toy's generator module and threw it to the ground, stepped on it several times with his foot. Only then did the sound finally disappear, but it was all too late. The thing above has obviously heard the sound below, started banging violently the iron gate, tried to open it with brute force, although the iron door has been fixed with chains. With such huge power, these chains appeared vulnerable. Several bases used for fixation were torn off. Claire couldn't help but rushed forward, grabbed the only remaining chain, tried to use her own weight to hold the iron door, but despite this, the iron door was still slowly opened. A pair of eerie yellow eyes appeared in the dark crack of the door. At this time, Ray rushed up with an iron rod, got rid of that monster. This gave them some time to close the door, and stuck on the lock wheel with an iron rod. They thought they were finally safe, but the action just now clearly angered the thing above. It summoned nearby companions. The deafening sound of footsteps seemed to be enough to sweep the shelter away. At this time, the door began to shake violently. That powerful force broke iron chains in pieces forcefully. Then several pairs of strange eyes appeared at the hatch. The family began to flee deeper into the shelter, but there was no hiding place in this narrow place. They set the curtains in the passage on fire, brought in shelves to block the door, hoping this would stop the monsters rushing in, but they also knew this just delayed it a little bit. At this time, Zoe discovered the vent to escape, so Ray first lifted Claire up and sent her out. After Claire went out, she found that all the monsters went to the shelter. It was safer outside, so she immediately picked up Zoe, but just when Ray was about to climb up, because his shoulders were too broad, got stuck in the hole. Seeing the monster chasing them getting closer and closer, Ray cruelly broke his arm, just to escape from this small vent, but when he finally leaned out half of his body, was about to escape that hellish shelter, a pair of big hands grabbed his ankle. He desperately left his last words to his wife, then was dragged down by that powerful force.
So it goes.
After a while there was a burst of heartbreaking screams and fighting sounds from the below, until a thick stream of blood spurted out. The voice finally quieted down. Claire knew what was going on down there, regardless of Zoe's hysterical struggle, took her and ran deep into the forest. After passing through the forest, they went to the town where they first fled. This place has become a ruin at this moment. They even built high walls. Quarantine warnings were displayed everywhere. At this time, a helicopter appeared above them. The dazzling searchlights exposed the two of them with nowhere to hide. The helicopter launched an iron net, captured them tightly. The two struggled desperately, those monsters that were hunting them, already in front of them now. At this time, we were surprised to find out those were not unknown monsters at all, but fully armed soldier in biohazard suit. They took off the yellow-lit night vision goggles and signaled to the helicopter to hunt down other survivors. At the same time, he took out a blood-taking needle to test the blood of Claire and Zoe. However, the results of the test were disappointing. The blood of the two has already turned the black color found only in infected people. It turned out as early as the early stage of the disaster, they were exposed to airborne viruses. During these years, it was not the monster they've been avoiding. Instead, they were hiding from the soldiers who were cleaning up the infected. Now these soldiers were about to kill them, and Claire, who was out of control, crazily wanted to protect her child. Black bloodshot eyes spread from the corners of her eyes, gradually covered the whole body. Just when these soldiers were about to shoot, the father suddenly rushed out. Stop this! The mutated Ray's combat power exploded. Just in a few seconds, he knocked these armed soldiers to the ground, but despite this he still couldn't withstand the hail of bullets. Finally fell under the gunfire, but he bought the mother and daughter time to escape. The mutated mother and daughter seemed completely lost human nature at this moment, until the last soldier was killed. Only then did they slowly calm down, restored human form. At the end of the video, those soldiers who survived were no longer protected by shields. They were also gradually infected by viruses in the air, and Claire and Zoe also found others similar who were still alive. In here they would no longer be treated as monsters.